Thank you. It's 5 o'clock. I'll call to order the December 14th meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. And we'll start off with the script for remotely conducted open meetings. Public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. As a preliminary matter, this is Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Airport Commission Chairman. Permit me to confirm all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Rafter?
Aye.
Mr. Carberg?
Here.
Ms. Sylvia?
Here.
Ms. Perales?
Here.
Ms. Stokover Nelson?
Here.
Welcome also.
Thank you.
And Ms. Sansbury?
Here.
Thank you. We don't have any anticipated speakers on the agenda. We will be joined at some point by Dave Mackey, Christina Marshall, or Mina Macarius of Anderson and Krieger, who will be with the commission for executive session, which follows the open meeting. Good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. The meeting will be aired at a later time on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have provided members of this body are available on town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for the effective and clear conduct of our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you. State your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will forward public comment to those members of the public who have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Moving on to the agenda, announce the meeting is also being both audio and video recorded. And we will look to review and approve the agenda as drafted. Are there any comments or concerns with the agenda as drafted? Hearing none, we'll consider that to be adopted by unanimous consent. We have the draft minutes from November 9th, 2021. Is there any questions, concerns, or a motion to adopt those minutes?
Make a motion to adopt.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? Seeing none, how do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
And Ms. Topham? Chair votes aye. We have the warrants of November 17th and December 1st for ratification. Is there a motion to ratify said warrants or any questions or concerns? Ms. Topham, you're muted. Does anyone else want to make that motion?
I'll make
I'll make the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. Any further questions or concerns? Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Good, thank you. And the chair votes aye. That's carried unanimously. Is there any public comment for items which are not on the agenda? I am not seeing any other members of the public on the participant list. So we will move on to pending leases and contracts set forth on Exhibit 1. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Rafter.
Thank you. The first is a letter of agreement with Anderson and Krieger with their updated rates for 2022. That's legal counsel for the airport. Next is a contract amendment with Track Builders, change order for some fuel farm work. There's a number of small change orders that were combined together for unforeseen items that they found during construction. There's also a contract amendment with Jacob Engineering for $87,091. That's supplemental agreement number 6 to Taxiway Echo. It's for the additional work that ATC testing had to perform. You may remember we did a number of tests to try to prevent the issue we had on the Taxiway Alpha area, and that is 100% funded through CARES Act money. We also have a contract amendment, another one with Jacobs for $9,633, and that is supplemental agreement number 4 for the fuel farm, and that had to do with some materials testing also that ATC did on that project.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns on any of the matters set forth on Exhibit 1? Is there a motion to approve the leases and contracts?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Moving on to pending matters, we have the capital approval process and the home rule petition. Mr. Rafter, Mr. Carver, do we have any updates on that?
No, if you don't mind, no. No, I just reached out recently again to Senator Sears' office for an update and explaining how important it was. Last we heard, it was in the 3rd reading and that they were going to be updating it soon. So he's trying to get that pushed along. Hopefully we can have that done because the FAA this year has changed they've moved forward the date for their grant applications as well.
Okay, and next we have the Pfas investigation update. Mr. Carver, I take it?
Yep, it's all yours, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For my PFAS report, you have an activity table update in your packet. We skipped this last time, I believe, with a consultant presentation. We're now at 500 samples collected from 77 private wells. And one note, I believe this is new since we've addressed the table. We've added a Sun Island column, as initially we responded to a high groundwater grab sample in the runway 24 approach that appeared to have been from off-airport origins. Out of an abundance of caution, we provided bottled water to a property owner, but it was later determined that the property owner's well supply was far outside of the range as indicated by the MCP. So that has been discontinued. There's no further action identified in this area or any action expected. So it's a column we might remove from future issuances of the table. For task order work and phase 2 investigation status, Weston Solutions collected an additional 6 soil samples adjacent to Mount Hansett Road that will help inform the crossing location for the water main. That data should be expected, I believe, late this week or next, and will be used to inform storage requirements for any of the surplus soil taken out of that area. The sampling budget is covered by a contingency in an already executed task order, so you won't see this item on your Exhibit A. Weston staff installed transducers, which is another word for a water level monitor. In 6 of the new temporary monitoring wells on the airport, they're generating data in 30-minute intervals and will be used to develop more robust groundwater flow models. Tomorrow, I believe Blackwell and Associates will be resurveying the existing wells on airport as well as any newly installed wells. This will also be used to generate updated groundwater flow information, and we should have that for the commission in the next few weeks. The groundwater grab sampling data that was undertaken by the LSP in November and December, that data is starting to arrive to the firm. The sampling was conducted over the period of several weeks, so the data is coming in. It's not all received yet, but they will take this data, proof it, append it, and come back to the commission for whatever the implications might be related to plume monitoring and how separate AFFF application sites are impacting down gradient wells. We're thinking internally that it would probably be appropriate and it would probably work out for timing to devote some time in the February commission meeting for the consultant group to present this data. And we'll keep you updated on data receipt. That February timeline would also overlap with the next anticipated IRA status report, which would also be due in February. For the water service project of 6 residences that we were actively working on for water services, 5 have had the new service installed to the house, and we're hopeful that in the next month we'll be able to complete the interior plumbing work and move these off the list, restore the site, and have them complete. For the 6th home, we're working around a complication with the utility survey. I believe we've identified the utility. It wasn't damaged or struck, but they found a utility was there that hadn't been marked and had to plan to work around it. So we'll get that home folded in with the rest. And then for the 7th home, we took a delay where we had some further discussions with the homeowner over the access agreements. And while this home has a completed curb stop, the project excavation has not been started. We'll catch this home up to the 6th where that service has been brought to the home. And then hopefully we'll move all of those homes off of our list and continue with the water main project, which is our next item. I don't have an update as of this afternoon, but as of yesterday midday, the project was moving forward with installation of water main and curb stops in place from Woodland Drive, past Webster, and into the cul-de-sac area of Skyline. I have a completion date for the close of business today for that work. I'll touch base with the engineer tomorrow morning and get an update on that. But I believe that the Skyline water main installation work should be completed by the end of today. This doesn't mean that the water services are completed. We would have to go back and do that, but the main disruptive work should be complete. The Matagasham Valley Road Branch work started yesterday evening with an overnight session to initiate the directional drill component across the approach to runway 6. What happened is the directional drilling firm was available and willing to mobilize, so we accommodated work, I believe, 7 to 10 days earlier than we had planned. They will also be working tonight on the same directional drilling and then moving down into the 3 areas along Matagasham Valley Road that also involve a directional drill approach. So we have the NOTAMs out for the runway closure. We've notified the public regarding nighttime closures on Matagasham Valley Road. I'm told it's a little bit of an unorthodox approach to the order of operations, but we are making the best use of the specialty drillers' availability and trying to keep the project on schedule. So it's still full speed ahead with that. And then my final item is on public communication. We've been updating our website with the project schedule and the look ahead schedule that's available through ack-pfas.com. And we've had contact with a number of residents on various project issues. We've had a high degree of general project interest in the last week in response to, I believe, residents seeing Robert Bauer mobilize and performing work. We've been fielding questions through homeowners about driveway, home access, and traffic routing. And we've also received a letter from a resident with a number of questions and concerns related to the airport's Pfas investigation and the airport and the town's combined mitigation responses. I provided that letter and the airport's response in the packet, and I believe, Tom, we have that as an item for any future direction from the commission that they might wish to undertake. And that would conclude my report.
Thank you, Noah. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
I do. I have a comment. I was noting with a little interest the communication between David McKay and Noah regarding his liability concerns about and also his interest in getting town water provided to his residents. I don't know if the commission and the airport would profit by maybe a sit-down in-person session with David, just to kind of take his temperature on that. In discussions with Noah, my understanding is that we can't divert our money to provide town water to somebody whose PFAS level was below 20 parts per trillion, as was his. But his letter suggests that he's been sitting there for at least 15 to 20 years exposed to PFAS, and he mentioned that he had a diagnosis of prostate cancer. I don't know that he wants to link those two, but I think it might be of some interest to us to maybe have a sit down and just discuss that a little bit with him. And I think I don't know whether he understands that we cannot divert our funds to provide a water service to his household. Does he understand that?
If I may, just for a point of clarification, Mr. Buscarin, I believe it's Peter McKay, not to be confused with Council Dave Mackey, just for clarification. But Noah, would you like to respond?
So we've had conversations about it. It's not the first letter we've responded to this resident, but I think it's the airport revenue diversion and use provisions aren't what I consider to be common public knowledge, and they might be items that are better brought forth in a conversational setting than letter to letter.
Yeah, I think that we might want to sit down with him just so that he understands that we are not legally allowed to provide town water to his house under the current situation. And I think his understanding his attitude toward us might change a little bit. I would hate for him to go out and retain counsel and start shaking the litigation tree without that vital piece of information. I don't know if you want to write him a letter or whether we want to sit down, Noah. You've had the contact with him, and I would defer to your judgment on that.
I have this resident's contact information, and I think I could certainly work out and set out a meeting here at the airport or some other convenient location. I don't know if the commission or Tom would want commission representative or another staff member there.
It may be, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
It may be beneficial too to loop in the town as well, because there may be something that they could do in their planning efforts too, to assist in him getting the water connection. So it's certainly worth it. Verbal communication's a lot better face to face, I think. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think also the town might have an interest in maybe offering to pay for some people that are in the same situation as Mr. McKay. I don't know who would be the point person on the town to have that meeting with. maybe we ought to talk to the town first about that issue and then bring in McKay.
Yeah, Noah's been working closely with the town on all the PFAS items. They have a group, a separate group there and leader, so we can coordinate with them.
So would it be efficacious for Arthur to advise, and maybe the commission to advise Noah to speak with the town and then contact McKay and see if we can have a discussion about that? I'd just like to keep that control over that issue and not let that escape our attention.
I agree, Mr. Buscarin. I think that Mr. Carberg did a good job on the response, and that's gone to him, and maybe let him, have a little bit of time to digest it, but not too much time, and follow up with a willingness perhaps to sit down with both him as well as the other neighbors that he copied, and maybe, just a conference room type meeting that also involves, I suspect it might be Assistant Town Manager Greg Tiven, who's been very, very involved with the PFAS type stuff. And obviously no commitments or anything, but just further hear their, be willing to hear their concerns in a face-to-face manner instead of just the letters, and certainly in consultation with council as well, I would think. And I'd be happy to do that if that was amenable to the commission.
I'd be happy to take direction from Noah as to how he'd like to proceed, but I think talking to the assistant town manager first, and then maybe a sit down with Mr. McKay and how we'd want to structure that, we'd take Noah's advice on that and Arthur's advice on that.
I'd agree. Does that, anybody have any concerns or further comments on that approach? Okay. So I'll circle back with Mr. Rafter and Mr. Carberg, and we can work out the finer details of that and see what we can do to, further here, and at least sit down and perhaps, as you mentioned, instead of just in the sort of written narrative, also further educate in terms of what limitations the airport does have.
Sure, I think that's good. Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you. Anything further on the overall PFAS, Mr. Marks?
Just about the water line, Noah, again, good job with the letter. I read both sides of that. I thought you answered it well, and I do agree with Mr. Buscarin, as well as keeping the line of communication open, but nice job. I thought it read well. Just, I noticed the guys are, looks like they're putting all the pipe together over here on Bunker Road for the directional boring. And I was just curious if they're anticipate any interruption of the traffic on Bunker Road at all.
No, there are no closures associated with Bunker Road. I need to discuss with the engineer. I believe that they would, when they began the directional drilling components of Matacasham Valley Road with the night work, that they would pull that pipe as a unit down Matacasham Valley Road to the receiving pit locations.
Right.
But it's, there's no closure other than letting whatever
The time it takes to pull to drag the pipe across the road. Okay, so it would be short term. Okay, just making sure. Yep, thanks.
You're welcome.
And only other thing, and I think you mentioned it was going to come in a month or so. I was just curious if the sampling is actually showing the flow pattern that we expect with respect to the fresh water flow off of the island. And maybe that's too soon a question to ask. I wasn't quite sure when you said that, if that was coming or not. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll clarify. It will be coming. If they're, those maps always, I think the maps have been updated 2 or 3 times with additional sampling. They haven't changed much. If anything, the lines have maybe become a little bit finer as to some micro or smaller scale variation. But we'd have to look for the product once that's completed in the next month.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on PFAS? I would just echo thanks, and that, my observation of the contracting work that's been happening to date has been very well organized and professional, and foremans and police, and I think the communication's going well, and happy to see this moving forward. Thank you. Moving on the agenda to item 6, we're requesting a ratification of the FAA Airport Rescue Grant Agreement in the amount of $2,145,648. Is there any questions on that grant or a motion to ratify?
I'd move to ratify.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
A motion been made, seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Item 7 is to discuss an upcoming rates and charges public hearing, which is scheduled for January 11th, 2022. We had a little primer of this last meeting and quite a bit of information in our packet. I'll turn it over to Mr. Rafter.
So, and I'll turn it over to Noah in just a minute, but we wanted to get this information out to the commission and the public because there are some changes in our typical review process of rates and charges. We're looking at adding some fees and changing some methodologies. And Noah's been doing a tremendous job of coordinating with the airlines and the other folks involved. So we want to get you this information so that if you have any questions, you can understand a little better going into the hearing what it is that we're doing and what changes we're making. So I'll turn it over to Noah, and then if there's any questions, we can discuss and move forward to make the hearing hopefully as smooth as possible on the 11th.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to start. I'm reading from the 3-slide PowerPoint presentation that's for PowerPoint printout presentation that's in your packet. But for a brief update, Nantucket is what's known as a rates by ordinance airport. The reason we have a public hearing is that we change rates based off of the power of the commission to oversee the financial stewardship of the airport. And it's a bit of an administrative burden, but it's an important one to reset how we equitably collect fees for our costs of providing services to our, thank you, Mr. Chair. For our costs of providing services to our aeronautical tenants. We're providing this in advance of our public hearing scheduled for January 11th, 2022. And we do have other sort of downstream elements that depend on this. We're reissuing our airline agreements after we complete rates and charges with the goal of having these on hand and approved in April, May, prior to our tenants starting service. So we have a few things lined up. We don't start service for a few months, but these dominoes do need to fall. Our focus for this rates and charges introduction and for the rates and charges changes are on scheduled terminal service or terminal scheduled service providers. Unlike past years where we've just updated fees to keep pace with our costs, we're changing both some of the fees and the method we use to assess the fees. And I'll go into this a little bit more later. We are maintaining fee waivers or proposing maintaining fee waivers for year-round operations. This airport has had a long-standing rate practice of valuing those tenants that provide year-round connectivity to the air transportation system. And we still propose the same fee waivers associated with that. And then sometimes, using addition by subtraction, it's easier to say what you're doing by saying what you're not doing. And we're not proposing any changes at this time to our transient or based GA tenants. The focus is on terminal scheduled service providers. On the second slide, to go more detail into the method and assessment changes. For terminal scheduled service, we have a method change for 2 items. to provide the 10,000, the 30,000 foot view. Nantucket is characterized by a very broad distribution in our based air service providers, highly variable in terms of the number of people they put through the airport, the type of aircraft they use, the weight of that aircraft, the number of seats that aircraft has. So our rates and charges, evolves with the air service that typifies the airport. For our terminal common areas, which I have attached in the packet spreadsheet, we're looking to implement what's known as the 80-20 split, where the common use areas for the terminals that passengers gather, the bathrooms, the holding areas, that they're assessed by a metric that's commonly used in other airports, where 20% of the fees are fixed equally among airline tenants, and the remaining 80% are on an enplanement basis. So airlines that put more passengers through the terminal bear a higher cost, commensurate with their service. We're also attaching a revision to the ramp fee, which takes sort of the one size fits all access approach to a per turn basis. And I'll discuss this more in the next slide. But again, those providers that put the most wear and tear on the ramp will be paying the highest cost, again, commensurate with the services that they demand. We have some assessment changes. We are assessing a bag fee, and we have a rate structure in the rates and charges related to that. And we're breaking out the ticket counters separate from the office space assessment. Our ticket counters are a very limited resource, and we want to make sure that airlines that need or use ticket counter frontage are paying for the fair share portion of the counters that they're using. And then we have other rate changes, which are more on the, I want to say, miscellaneous set of items. Equipment abandonment fees. We want to make sure that if airlines leave our market and leave equipment, that we have the appropriate cost recovery mechanisms for assessing that equipment. And we're aligning our parking ticket recovery with the Nantucket Police Department schedule. And then for further information on the ramp fee and draft policy background, we have, up till now, we've currently assessed ramp fee. It's really more akin to a lease item and a one fee per use item that airlines pay through their space rental. And we're moving it to an activity-based fee where we believe it should be, where it's more similar to a collected landing fee than it is for a lease item. What this does is it results in a year-to-year increase of up to $173,000 or 536% for one particular tenant. The rest of the tenants don't see increases quite that amount. But again, this is a lot to ask of, I think, any tenant in a year-over-year market, regardless of their company's size. Unfortunately, I think the commission has a metric to deal with this. What we're suggesting and what I've attached as a draft policy is similar to what the commission did for the sudden escalation that we saw in the fair market value for land. And we would phase in this ramp fee over 5 years to make it a sort of an easier item for the airlines to manage. Many have already set their budgets for the upcoming year. And this really, I think, makes it a more palatable item for those airlines. So the other item that I have in your packet is that draft policy for your review. And I'm bringing it up on my screen as well for reference.
I'm trying to find it. One second. Here we go. My apologies.
Okay. So it's a simple 1-page, well, 3-page policy. Again, under the purpose, I've listed out the fee schedule for what would be the 5-year interval. The 2022 agreement value would be capped at 10% of the 2021 values. The 2023 agreements would be capped at 25% in addition to the 22 values, etc. So that's the fee basis that I'm proposing. And then the last page just provides some preliminary calculations for the airline's benefit on how this would work out. And the policy really assigns staff the administrative effort to keep this table current and distribute it to airlines.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, this is something I think, again, next month, we're going to be looking for the commission's approval on a policy. As Noah said, it's similar to what we did on the land rental. But for somebody to absorb a 536% increase in their budget, that's asking a little bit much. So you can see the numbers here. It's starting to recapture some of the costs to operate the terminal here too.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes the items I was going to highlight, Mr. Chair. There are only 2 other items in your packet. I broke out some detail on our 3-year enplanements that are used to generate the terminal common use square charge. I'm not going to run through those in detail unless requested, but those are available. And then I have a red line track changes documents of the rates and charges, proposed changes for the public hearing in January.
Thank you.
I would also offer, if this is a lot to digest, if there's any questions before the next meeting, if any commissioners have any questions, as usual, just shoot us an email or whatever.
Okay,
When do we complete, when do we transmit this information to the airlines? Are they aware of this? I mean,
I'm going to let Noah answer it, but I have to give him kudos because, as I was saying earlier, he's done a great job in coordinating this and has already had a couple of meetings. So Noah, I'll let you take it though.
All right, so we've had one formal airline meeting and we've had a number of email exchanges with the airlines. So we brought them in early to update them on the progress, the need, our 5-year CIP, and the gap that we see in terminal and airfield needs that won't be provided by federal funding, and how their particular market sector sits at Nantucket historically, and our need to identify and capture these items. The major item for feedback that they provided was related to the ramp fee. We had proposed a different methodology that was far more complicated, and they responded with their preferences for something more along the lines of the ramp fee as an activity basis or a per turn basis. The other item that we did, and we're not expert benchmarkers, but our cost per enplaned passenger as we forecast them really are in line with what they pay at other similar airports. So I don't think this is anything, no one likes to pay more, but I don't think it's out of the ordinary for what they can expect.
okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners have any comments, concerns, questions regarding this change in methodology, the draft policy, or the preliminary redlined version? Okay, so it looks like we will move forward with the scheduled advertised public hearing for January 11th and see what kind of feedback we get from the public, and then, go from there. Anything further, Mr. Rafter? Or Mr. Carver?
I'd like to thank Noah because the other piece that he had mentioned here, kind of went over it pretty quickly, but the airline lease agreement update is also what he's been working on. It ties to the rates and charges, but there's a number of other items that we were working to make a consistent agreement, and the airlines have been very helpful. And again, under Noah's stewardship, the communication was excellent, and we have a lot of good feedback from them. And that's the other the comparable compatible document to this, I guess, is the lease. And it's no easy lift. I'll leave it at that, but he's done a great job with it.
Thank you. And my only other comment might be that for the public hearing, perhaps it might be helpful to also include in the packet the current CIP, as I really do think that that really helps to support, why this is being done. We've got an awfully lot out ahead of us as well. Thank you. If I hear nothing further, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a declaration of surplus property for the concession space in the terminal, and that's in our packet, Mr. Rafter.
Yeah, I believe this is for the concession space in the tent.
Term.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Again, it's first step in issuing the RFP. This is a requirement that we have to do. So,
Any questions or comments on the declaration of surplus property?
do we
If
need
not,
to vote?
is there a motion to make this declaration?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you. Moving on to finance, and we have our final operating budget for fiscal year 23. I'll turn that over to Mr. Rafter.
Thank you. Again, Jamie's done a tremendous job with this. In fact, when I went through it the first time, I had very few questions because her notes in the note column were extremely helpful. Jamie and I met with the town manager this morning and went over this budget, and the changes between what you saw at the last meeting and this version include the following. The debt service was decreased due to some refinancing of some debt. There's a net decrease of $17,000. Insurance was increased per the town's estimate, which was an increase of $10,000. And therefore the professional services account was adjusted by $7,000 to rebalance the budget. The fuel farm revolver, we're looking to lower from 5.5 million to 4.5. Jamie and Noah and I have had a lot of discussion on this, and we feel that's the best number to go for 23. We removed the FinCom column that Mr. Buscarin suggested. That was a good idea. We cleaned that up. And you'll notice the two tables to the right on what you're seeing on the screen. The PFC and Stability Fund balances have been updated through November 2021. They will continue to be updated and changed with the most current information as we get closer and closer to ATM. They're a continuous change, if you will. So they're the changes between the prior version and the final. And again, Jamie's done a tremendous job. We still have not received the retained earnings number. We're hoping to get that in January. I don't want to take a guess at a number, but I would say we're going to have at least a decent amount of retained earnings, which when I reflect back on my initial starting here at the airport, retained earnings weren't even in our vocabulary. So again, great work. And take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Commissioners, does anybody have any questions regarding the proposed final budget?
No.
If not, is there a motion to adopt the budget final version 2 dated 12/14/21?
That motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none. Ms. Plansner, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. Thank you all for your work on this. And with that, we'll turn it over to the manager's report, Mr. Rafter.
Thank you. Projects under Taxiway Echo, the physical work on Taxiway Echo is on hold for the season, but we're continuing to work behind the scenes, addressing some Pfas concerns, some change orders for the decommissioning runway 1230 and paving the north ramp. The work is actually expected to restart in March. And we received a grant, just recently received a grant award letter from MassDOT for the work associated with the intersection of Taxiway Foxtrot and the GA paving on the north apron. We're awaiting the standard contract for that, so that's good news. The security phase 2 project, contractor came out and replaced one of the 3 sets of doors that they're supposed to, but unfortunately they apparently measured the other 2 incorrectly, and we'll be back out in February to complete that project. The fuel farm rehabilitation work is moving forward. Thank you for approving the change order earlier. There's another one that will be coming next month. Our OPM is working through that with regard to some electrical issues. The schedule was delayed slightly due to the presidential visit, but the main driver of the schedule are the skids, which are due in January, and we still anticipate a February, March completion. Runway 1230 decommissioning, the contractor from the Taxiway Echo project has expressed interest in completing the work in the spring, and we're moving forward with obtaining the price and executing the change order. There's a whole host of other items associated with the 1230 decommissioning, from runway or airport certification to forms that need to be filed and so on. Working on that. The crew quarters housing project, we're working on development of a request for proposals for the project manager, and then we'll be working towards developing the scope for an architect. Hangar development, continuing with the negotiations with Mr. Turner, but not a lot of movement there. The Hagedorn hangar, they filed their construction alteration application. We went back to them with some comments regarding their foundations, and they're going to be addressing that. Again, we're still hearing that they're hopeful to be completed by March. The water main project, Noah updated you on earlier. The RFP and bids, still working on the contract for the security system. The terminal space optimization, we have an RFQ. We selected the project manager through an RFQ process, and we're working on developing and negotiating a contract. Car rental RFPs, we received 3 proposals. They are currently under review. The HVAC terminal project, bids were due in December 3rd, and we received no bids again. I believe this is the 2nd or 3rd time. So we're going to have to regroup and figure out what our next steps are there. And the OPM for the housing project, as I mentioned, RFP is being developed. On the operational side of the house, I have to tell the commission, it was another extraordinary performance by all staff. The levels that they have to work at and the multitude of agencies they have to accommodate to handle a presidential visit. You know, we're all familiar with the Bidens coming to the island, but when you're in the president, it's a whole different game. And while every member of the staff did a phenomenal job, and I mean everybody pitched in. I'd like to give a special shout out to Preston Harriman and Noah Carberg. They led the charge in coordinating it, and it was no small feat. So I'd like to thank them all, and just wanted to let you know behind the scenes, it's not easy. However, on the other side of the coin, our holiday sales for Thanksgiving were down because of the TFR that was associated with the traffic. And let me see here. Actually, yeah, so if you combine Stroll and Thanksgiving, looking at our numbers, we're down about 27,000 or 8% from 21 over the 2019 budget. Over 2020, it looks fantastic that we grew 90%. But our benchmark, we go back to 19 pre-COVID. So not a significant impact. We made up some of them in Stroll, but there is an impact to the holiday sales there. We had a meeting with the Steamship Authority representatives regarding our fuel supply issues and concerns, and it was very educational. We're looking to improve the communications and coordination with them, and through some of the technology on the fuel farm rehabilitation, we'll be able to do some provide a remote monitoring to other parties, so that maybe that'll be very helpful. So we're working closely with them to ensure we can get as much fuel here as we need. Maintenance is working on some last minute equipment and material checks on snow removal. Unfortunately, we have to deal with that. Our operations department held their annual preseason meeting with all the users on snow removal. We've had a number of meetings with internally, and today with TSA and the airlines on our family assistance program. And operations is also in the process of reviewing and updating our SMIGS program, which is Surface Movement Guidance and Control System. And we have an interest, a Mooney Association, Mooney Flying, is looking to do a Mooney fly-in. And they were looking at considering a fall event. Excuse me. And I'd like to just, get some feedback. We're still trying to gather more information as to what that means. But I think it would be a great event if we were able to accommodate. That's my report before statistics.
Does anybody have any questions on Mr. Rafter's report? I for one think a fly-in would be amazing if you can pull off the details there and keep us posted. But I'll see how everyone else feels about that.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Great idea.
It sounds great.
I agree.
Want me to put the statistics up? Are you ready for statistics?
Yeah, I'm not, but
Just skip it, right?
well, you'll see. There's some good news. United flew in October this year, which was very helpful. That helped the employment count quite a bit. But the others, it's that time of season when they're starting to wind down a bit, but it was still a pretty good month for us, especially in employments. The freight was down a little bit, and we had a couple of noise complaints.
Mr. Rafter, if I could, I think we all have this in our packet, and we can probably hold off there and really digging in unless anybody has any other. If anyone has anything further or questions on it, we can scroll through it pretty quick, I think, without getting into all the detail per that's in there.
Good news is fuel continues to do very well.
Thank you. And that's what I was just trying to get at. Oh, there we go. So here we have our the Jet A year to date up 44%, and thought I had also seen Avgas up 18% on the year to date. So that's good news for us. And then the freight that Mr. Rafter referred to is here. And then there were 4 noise complaints, which Mr. Carberg, I take it, detailed. Any other questions on the statistics? Personnel report, anything, Mr. Rafter?
A couple of brief things. One, I'd like to just remind everyone that Lillian's last day is December 17th. And I'd like to thank her for all her work and wish her a lot of success in her future endeavors. And we're also in the process of filling the compliance manager position that was left vacant when David took over the airport security coordinator position. That concludes my report.
Thank you, and best wishes, Ms. Sylvia. We'll miss you and appreciate all of your efforts. Any other comments on the personnel report? And next, we had our commission meeting calendar, though I didn't see that in the packet. And I don't know if that had already been laid out, or, and I think there's also the discussion, just generally speaking, with respect to remote meetings versus in-person meetings. And my understanding is that the town still doesn't have that they're working on that trailer space, and it's also being used for some that, COVID, I think it's vaccination or booster type purposes. So my sense is that we're gonna have to take this on a month-by-month basis, and hopefully we can get back to in person sooner rather than later, but I don't know how much choice we really have at the moment. We might want to keep this as a standing type of an item, and maybe we let the town know that, we're talking about it and looking for that physical space at some point.
Mr. Chair, Katie has been in touch with Erica about that, and she has indicated that once that space does become available, she'll make sure we are placed in that spot. So,
Mr. Chairman, sorry to
Yes.
interject. I just realized when you said it that the calendar was not placed into the packet. The calendar does show the second Tuesday of the month for every month in 2022. I don't know if you guys feel comfortable voting to have the meeting the second Tuesday of the month for each month, or if you'd rather just wait till next month and I'll include the calendar.
Thank you, Ms. Perales. I think that's fine. I personally, I'll leave it to the commission, but that's sort of good to stay on a pattern, and we don't have to, if you don't have any interruptions that have to do with moving it because of a holiday or anything else, it seems pretty straightforward to me. Any concerns with the calendar for next year, meeting dates? Okay, I think we can just agree to that. Any other commissioners' comments?
Yeah, I just had one comment for me.
Yes, Mr. Marks.
Yeah, I'm just curious if, I know you can do this, I don't know how to do it, but it'd be easy for us because there's so much material in the PDF file to link the item to so we'll go to that area where all that information is off of the agenda.
the table
It
of
would make it
work-
hugely helpful. I don't know if you can, how hard it is to do or not, I really don't know, but just, it would make it easy when I'm trying to go through it all. Thanks.
I'm not sure, but if you note on they have actually the packet is very well bookmarked, and if you use the bookmark feature on the packet, it gets you right to the the other slides and some of the information. I mean, that's how I tend to jump through it.
All right, I'll have to check that out then.
I
Thanks.
show you,
The
just,
bookmarking
I'll do it
feature.
real quick, not to sidetrack a meeting, but if you open up this tab here, then you can go straight to
Okay.
rates and charges. It works.
Gotcha.
It works pretty nice when it's set up this way. And not everything is perfect, but it definitely helps to use this. So,
Perfect, thanks.
yep. Any other commissioners' comments?
No.
Hearing none. Any public comment for items which are not on the agenda? I see that we have one other attendee.
That's an
Council.
attorney working with the council, yes.
Okay, thanks. Let me just check quick to see the other participants. I don't see anyone else from the public. So with that, we would entertain a motion to go into executive session per general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for possible release, as well as to review the minutes of November 9th for review and possible release. Item B would be clause 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the airport commission. Item C to clause 3 to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport. Is there such a motion?
That
So
motion.
moved.
The motion's been made, and is there a second?
Second.
Not, and I'll just a friendly amendment to that, not to return to open session. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Viscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. Thank you all very much. And I would just ask, we have counsel here, and if we could stop the recording, please, Ms. Perales.